Hello, everyone. It is Monday, July 16th, 2018, and this is episode 2 of E2KG Deep Dive, which is our gaming discussion show, new format where we kind of melded our topic show and our news show together. So we're going to be covering the week in gaming that was July 9th through the 13th. Um, Summer cold isn't enough to keep me from hosting tonight. Um, for those of you that are aware, I'm SwissGuard and I have children and they have germs, so it's inevitable. But I am joined by two of my colleagues, DBQ Hams. How are you, sir?
I'm doing really well, thank you, SwissGuard. That's great. I have my stuffy nose on too. I'm good. No, actually, I'm great. I'm sorry that you have a summer cold. That's never very fun. Um, but I'm glad that you're here and hosting, and I think we've got some good stuff to cover here in the middle of July, where there's not always a lot going on, but we get some good stuff to talk about tonight.
Well, if there's one thing about E2KG is we start the show thinking, do we have enough to talk about? And we end the show rushing to wrap up after we've already blown through our time target. So
Yes, we are never hesitant to discuss topics and to put our crabby old man gamer hats on and point sticks at people.
and there will be some. I actually, yeah. Given tonight's topic, I think there's going to be a lot of get off my lawn mentality. So,
So do you want
um,
to tease us a little bit about what tonight's topic is here, Swiss?
um, yeah.
Should we just launch right into the news?
Let's go to the news, and then we'll take the news and we'll wrap it up in a nice little bow, and there'll be a wonderful segue into the actual discussion topic. So that will be our tease. We're joined by the our intrepid leader Agasicles Stamus. How are you doing?
Not a leader, just a citizen.
All right. Let's we'll call him. We won't call him our leader, but we'll call him the man behind the curtain. How about that? So, all right. So, deep dives. We start with the news blender, where we each pick two news stories that have interested us from the rest of the week during the course of the previous week. It could be big stories. It could be stories interesting to us personally. And Agasicles, you are first on the docket.
Yay! So over on Video Games Blogger, I sourced this news story from last week. Dakar 18 release date and new trailer. Portuguese development studio and rally enthusiast BigMoon Entertainment have announced the official release date for the upcoming rally raid simulation Dakar 18, which incidentally no longer takes place in Africa. I was very surprised to find out. Maybe they ought to change the name, although Dakar does have a lot of nostalgia and history associated with it. The cross-country rally racing game is coming to PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PlayStation and PC platforms, on September 11th, 2018, based on the world-famous annual rally raid organized by the Amari Sport Organization in South America. I still keep wanting to say South Africa. Dakar 18 is a realistic simulation of the biggest cross-country rally in the world and features a variety of official vehicles and one of the biggest open worlds ever created. Ever, Swiss, ever. Talk to me about Splatoon 2.
All right. So yeah, I'm probably not going to pick that game up. But all right, Splatoon 2. I got this from Eurogamer. Nintendo bans Splatoon 2 cheater who hacked the game to ask Nintendo to ban cheaters. So Nintendo has banned a Splatoon 2 player from playing online after they hacked the game in a bid to call on Nintendo to combat cheaters. A Redditor using an account called Please Add Anti-Cheat owned up to being behind the image of the Rank X leaderboard for the Nintendo Switch exclusive that raised eyebrows earlier this week. And the screenshot here shows top players in Rank X, Splat Zones, Tower Control, Rainmaker, and Clan Blitz. In order, said, please add anti-cheat were the names of the leaders. So he said, please add anti-cheat, said they edited their X power to boost their performance in the game then use multiple accounts to spell out please add anti-cheat. I never personally played the first Splatoon, but I heard how bad it was, being overrun by cheaters who tamper with the game and impose unfair advantages on others. Please add anti-cheat said. I at first was relieved that the Switch had a decently strong system security, perhaps what the development team thought as well, yet it doesn't justify removing all the security measures from the first game and leave the game and its players completely defenseless to ill-purposed griefers who mod their game to victory. I figured that someone needs to deliver a message to Nintendo. So, personally, my family plays a lot of Splatoon 2. I haven't really seen too much in terms of cheat problems. I haven't heard complaints, but I got the sense, do you guys ever have too much in terms of, those movies where the villain does something evil just to prove that something evil can be done? That's what I got out of this story. But
It's a little bit Thanos from Avengers: Infinity War, right?
I haven't seen it yet. No spoilers.
Okay, sorry.
Anyway, DB has perfect segue, Agastocles. Speaking of the Disney Leviathan, DBQ has this story for us.
There we go. Yes, it is connected to the Disney Leviathan, isn't it? It took me a minute there to think about that. But so this came out last week. This is that my story, actually, I picked up from CNBC. It got a lot of coverage on gaming sites, but I chose CNBC and some other places specifically because of the crossover aspect here. So this is Overwatch hits the big time with ESPN broadcast deal. So Overwatch, the Overwatch League is in its playoffs of its first season. So the season, and it started back in January, February, somewhere around there, started early in the year. And last week was the first round of the finals. This week we have the second round of the finals on Wednesday and Friday, July 18th and 20th. But the story here is that it's going to be picked up, or already has been picked up, by across the Disney networks, right? So Disney XD and ESPN will also air on ABC. On July 29th, they will have the grand finales will be on Disney XD and ESPN. And then there will be a recap also on ABC. It's going to be in prime time. So the grand finales are going to be covered. And it's going to be the first time live competition gaming will air on ESPN prime time. So in terms of esports, in terms of getting some crossover appeal, Blizzard has already worked with Disney XD on some other pieces. They've streamed and had some Heroes of the Storm competitions, and ESPN has dabbled in esports in the past, often with ESPN2. But this is the first time that we hit both primetime and we get one of the classic big traditional networks like ABC. So that is my first story, and we go from yes.
I was about to say you go back to back.
I know, so I'm making a transition, and you interrupted my transition.
I know.
Right. So we go from the big American Disney Leviathan over across the pond to Germany, and the news story here comes out of Eurogamer, and this one actually just came out today. That German courts, the headline reads, vague release dates for pre-orders banned in Germany. So German courts have now had a ruling that pre-orders with a coming soon date or available soon are no longer able to be listed on retailer sites, that there needs to be a specific date that something will be released rather than we know we're going to produce this, so here's a placeholder and please pre-order now so that we can have your money, or guarantee a pre-order. And so this is there are definitely some of those where we have placeholders, right? If you look at Amazon, that you get the December 31st, 2018 pre-ordered release date because it's said to be coming out sometime this year. And again, this does not apply for America, and it doesn't even apply for all of Europe. But I think it starts to get at that idea of publishers putting things out there, and retailers putting things out there that we saw this with before E3, where there were the releases in the Canadian Walmart site, right? That they had no release dates, but people were just putting up pre-order pages and making them live for the sake of potentially guaranteeing a sale and getting some of that pre-order. So those are my two stories, and I'm going to kick this back over to you, Agassicles, because you've got a little bit more to talk about people who might necessarily have pre-ordered, but definitely have invested some money in a game that may or may not be coming soon.
Yeah, so this is the doozy story for me from last week. Over on Blues News, this source this post: Star Citizen refund refusal. Longtime backers of the Star Citizen project are no longer able to secure funds from Cloud Imperium Games, reports Attack of the Fanboy. They note a Reddit post from a customer who sued to get a refund and lost in small claims court. Word is that CIG, Cloud Imperium Games, is now enforcing a change to the Terms of Service, the TOS, that was made around a year ago that permits them to refuse refunds requested more than 14 days after a pledge, which this court decision upheld. CIG has now collected almost $190 million in funding from over 2 million backers since 2011, 7 years in development, people, for a project originally planned for a 2014 release, which helps explain why some have lost patience that this has evolved into 2 different games still in the alpha stage of development. Square Enix got no strings on me. Refunds and other topics are part of an incredible new tweet storm from Derek Smart, as the outspoken skeptic of this crowd-funded space game offers analysis and criticism of various aspects of the situation. Here's most of the Reddit post discussing the court decision, which we will talk about here shortly after the news blender. Swiss, take us home, man.
All right, last news story. And it's my story, but I must credit DB for finding it for me. So this is from Nintendo Life. Square Enix issues apology after underestimating huge Octopath Traveler demand. Much to the delight of pretty much everyone, last Friday finally saw the release of Octopath Traveler, Square Enix's gorgeous HD 2D RPG. Seems the game's popularity was hugely underestimated, however, with stock shortages leaving many fans without a physical copy. In Japan, Square Enix took to Twitter to apologize to fans who were unable to secure their own box delight. This message from the game's official PR account notes the company's sympathy for those who have missed out, going on to suggest fans could consider buying the game digitally while the game is out of stock. In a similar story elsewhere too, with mega retailer Amazon facing familiar stock difficulties in the US, leaving fans with no choice but to endure a 1 to 2 month wait. The international versions of the game, everywhere other than Japan, have actually been published by Nintendo, so it would seem that the game's huge demand has surprised almost everyone involved in its release. So that rounds out the news blender tonight. And as you can probably guess from the final 3 stories, the theme of this evening's discussion will be pre-orders. So we have a story, countries and with the Cloud Imperium games and individuals second guessing, I don't want to say the concept of the pre-order, for Germany, it's the concept of the open-ended pre-order. For Cloud Imperium, we're starting to venture into the Kickstarter idea of, okay, what is it that I'm actually doing? Am I an investor? Am I a consumer? Am I simply someone who wants to see a cool game flourish? Am I a patron of the arts? So there's a lot to tackle there in the news stories, but with the Octopath Traveler story, which is why I think it was so appropriate, and I'm glad DB pointed it out to me, paranoia. Am I going to miss out on a game? I need to lock in my copy. So that's another aspect of pre-order. So tonight's discussion is we're going to chew a little bit on pre-orders and how we as old man gamers view them. So Agassicles, I think you had the kind of the primary hook story, which was Cloud Imperium games and Star Citizen. Now they've made a ton of money, and people are starting to question the wisdom of plopping down some cash and hoping that a game is going to release in the next couple of years in a Kickstarter campaign. So, um, I guess what are your thoughts in general on pre-orders? Do you pre-order that? Do you currently use pre-orders? Do you Kickstarter? Do you see a distinction between what Star Citizen and Cloud Imperium are doing versus when you're at GameStop and they're like, oh, by the way, you want to put $5 down on Spider-Man? So, what's your thoughts on that?
So in general, I don't pre-order. Despite it's always difficult to explain who we are in terms of what we cover and what we do on this network and on this show, on our shows. We deep dive into this stuff, but we're normal blokes, right? We're not. Every once in a while, we get a little bit of additional access, but we're not. We're just not a group of journalists who gets free games sent to them. We don't talk to developers on a normal basis. So for me, I still generally wait to see reviews from sites. Not only do we not do reviews because we don't get sent stuff for free. I mean, we could do reviews, but I've done reviews in the past, and I don't like doing reviews. So I generally try and find journalists, other internet personalities who I know, whose opinions I align with, and wait to hear those publications put out their take on a game, just so I don't waste money. Now again, sometimes I do get a little ahead of the curve and grab something to specifically test it out, usually at something less than the $60 price. In general, what I advise people is I don't personally feel like there's any reason for any normal person to pre-order, right? Like, I mean, I'm trying to say this without sounding arrogant. If you're not an expert and you're not a game reviewer, there's no need for you to be on the entering wave, right? There's no need for you to put your $60 down to encounter the game crippling bug, the Bethesda domination bug that forces you to start completely over. Other people get paid money to do that, so let them do it. Now, if it's a tried and true franchise that I'm invested in and I trust the developer and the publisher and I kind of feel like I know what I'm getting, and that franchise always does it for me, even if it's not always the same, then those I pre-order. But even then, am I really not going to be able to walk into the store on the first day and buy the game? So, Forza Motorsport, Forza Horizon, the Dirt series, sports games that I'm comfortable with, I don't mind pre-ordering, but that's kind of about it. I might pre-order, even though I just called out Bethesda for their domination bugs, I might pre-order Fallout 76 because that's a sure buy. But Halo, maybe even Just Cause might be in that envelope.
So let me muddy the waters a little bit here, though. So, I'm gonna put out two pre-order arguments of why I've done it and why people might. Right, one is the exclusivity, right? I mean, there's a decade worth of pre-order bonuses that actually nowadays they're digital items, and they probably do not give you as much content as they appear. But for something like Octopath Traveler, it came out with $100 collector's edition, right? For something like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, it came out with a collector's edition. Ni no Kuni 2. I say this as somebody who has pre-ordered the Spider-Man collector's edition because sometimes those collector's editions tend to sell out, right? I also own a Fire Emblem collector's edition, which I could happily sell for 3 times as much as I paid for it, right? I mean, so there are potential there, but then it becomes a collectible. But the other aspect is kind of the thrust that some retailers have gone to for pre-orders and for enticing people into pre-orders. So if you're at Amazon and Amazon Prime, if you pre-order, you get 20% off a game title, and so that's $10 off a brand new game, which may or may not go on sale. Unless it's a Ubisoft or an EA game, it may go on sale within the first couple weeks. But that idea of making it a financial decision that if I pre-order a game at Best Buy with Gamers Club, which is going away, but I get 20% off, and also for some games, I could also get a $10 gift certificate, a rewards certificate. So I have pre-ordered a number of games because of that. That a $60 game suddenly becomes a $42 game after tax, right? And so that to me becomes, well, I can play it now and play it cheaper, or I can wait 3 months for a sale and get the same price for it. So
Yeah, so
I
I'm sorry, go ahead, Swiss.
well, I can sympathize somewhat with people that pre-order because for those of you on YouTube, you see this is my cart of Ocarina of Time for the N64. It's my favorite game ever, and you'll notice it was the gray cartridge because my pre-order got screwed up at Sears and they didn't give me the gold cartridge.
it's because you pre-ordered from Sears is
Yeah.
probably the answer.
Well, I trusted my mom because I wasn't, at the time. That was a mistake. Pro tip: don't trust your mom who doesn't know about gaming to to pre-order. I think they literally asked her, "Hey, we actually over pre-ordered the gold cartridges. Do you mind getting the gray one?" And she said yes because she didn't know better. But and I still remind her about that every now and then, every Christmas. Um, so yeah, there was a time when like with the Octopath Traveler story, you have limited quantities. You got to lock in your copy, but that begs the question: is this all going away anyways? Because aren't we going all digital soon, anyways? Like there's all this worry about pre-order and pre-order bonuses and whatnot, but if I don't get my copy, I can just download it day one. I don't. Fine, I can pay and then have it pre-download to my system so I can make sure that I play right at midnight. But if I don't care about that, it's going to be ready for me in the morning. So, Agasicles, do you think this is becoming a moot point as far as like regular gamer guy wanting to pre-order? Because we're going to be digital soon, anyways.
Yeah, so I want to swerve back quickly to DB's two points. So one thing is on the collector's edition. Like I feel like that's almost like a sub segment of that conversation of pre-orders, right? Because then there's a question of I mean I think we've done a topic at some point in the past, definitely back on Casual Adult Gamers, of like, do you buy collector's editions and what is that all about? So that's one thing. But then the other thing is going in for the discounts. I can see that, and I guess what I would think is that everybody's got to weigh that risk reward potential, right? Because if you get 20% off and pay $40 or whatever for a $60 game, and it winds up being a game you don't want, then you got to figure out how to recoup that cost. And yes, you can go sell it back at GameStop, but I mean, you guys know me well enough. I'm very much a creature of convenience, and I'm only going to experience so much churn, right, to manage things like that. Swiss, your question, I'm going to actually answer a question that you're not asking, which is pre-orders are almost another thing, maybe that's a little different from like the Star Citizen thing, right? This gets to a matter of trust, and I don't want to go completely down this well hole. We'll still keep it in pre-orders, but just to bring it up because we've kicked it around a little bit before, it's also in this matter of what is early access, right? Which is a thing that the more and more it goes on, it just continues to pain me more and more. You talk about harkening back to the good old days, and there were days when we got demos, and that was a thing, and then there was a whole teen angst in the developer industry about, well, do we want people to be allowed to demo our game? That takes away resources. People start talking badly about the game when they haven't experienced the whole thing, and then they take us out of the zeitgeist. And I get that, living in the software biz myself. But this new phenomenon of early access, thank you very much, Valve, and things like, what is the game that Prime plays? And I'm constantly asking him, so is this thing in early access, or it's like something like now there's early release? Like, I'm starting to get angry. So, but
right there, yeah, PUBG, right? There's a lot of things that have gone through that. What counts as early release or early access, depending on the platform, and then what actually does that mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So our question, I feel like our question tonight is about whether it's pre-orders or going in for early access, it's what do publishers and developers owe us as consumers in terms of trust, and how is it right that I give you money to help you finish a game and you fail to do so negligently, criminally, and you don't owe me anything back? And I'm talking about I guess I'm talking about the ethics and moral of it. I don't want to get into the legalities of it.
Oh, okay.
But if you, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
You
shut
just
you down.
blocked my point.
No,
Now
no,
I
no.
agree with
If
you.
you want to
Okay,
get
by
into
the way,
legalities, go ahead.
I agree with you ethically. So yeah, and I think you did kind of answer the question, which was that I to circle back again. That yeah, pre-orders aren't going away. They've taken a new form now in the digital age. You know, we still have the physical copy pre-orders, and that's why it's a shame that Best Buy Gamers Club is going away, because I could wait and see if the game was good and then buy it from them physical and still get that discount that you alluded to, DB, with Amazon. But now that people are starting to download games, and in the PC market, everything's digital, how are you going to get that money kind of starting to flow a little earlier? So now we saw the rise of early access. And then, you know, Kickstarter is a little different, but it's kind of the same principle. You get the like you said, the consumer involved early, and you're very locked in on the consumer mentality. And you said, well, it's negligent to put something out that doesn't work. Every piece of software that goes out nowadays is like, it's as is. Okay, the software works according to the ones and zeros in its computer, you know, in the code. It, you know, you and I are developers. We know that garbage in, garbage out. The computer is going to do exactly what you tell it to do, and that's what we sold you. We sold you what we told the computer to do. We're sorry if we, you know, we're human, and we might have given the computer some incorrect commands or what have you. But every end user license agreement says that. So I don't want to say, I say it's ethically wrong, but I don't really feel like we can kind of go after that. What I do think that is more interesting is the concept of, are you a consumer? Because I guarantee you that, you know, the guys like Cloud Imperium Games, they're saying, no, 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 no. You know, we're not selling our game to these people. These people are, like as DB said at the beginning, patrons of the arts. They want to see a magnificent digital project realized, fully realized for mankind. And you know what? Michelangelo didn't paint the Sistine Chapel in 2 years, like your normal 2-year release cycle. It took him a long time. Art takes time, and you know, you're not a consumer, you're a patron, and you need to be patient. So how would you respond to that, DB?
Oh, lots to chew on there. So I think one thing, I think you're right, but I think there's two different ways that we talk about this, right? Is that idea of if you're going down the Kickstarter route, the idea that you're not buying the game, you're investing into it, right? I mean, this is where we've seen the rise and fall of Kickstarter as a platform, is that there were a lot of failed expectations and games, as you're saying, I guess, that never came out, or never came out in the form that they actually were promised, or are 3 to 5 years late, right? I mean, some of the biggest Kickstarter games are slowly trickling things out, and so I think that there's a distinction there between the consumer's trust and pre-ordering a game because you just want to buy. You're not even buying access, really, right? I mean, that idea that you're just pre-ordering a game, even if I can justify it within the financial reasons, I completely agree with you about waiting on a pre-order to find out some reviews, right? I'm looking at VG charts again. You know, they give sales numbers, but they also have some pre-order estimates here. And the top 10 pre-order games this year, one of those is Detroit Become Human. So almost 88,000 people pre-ordered Detroit Becoming Human before it got panned by critics, right? And so that idea of investing in something that you're not sure of. The number one pre-ordered game this year so far, over 600,000, is MLB The Show 2. And so, yes, there's a big fan base for MLB The Show, but MLB The Show 17 last year, and MLB The Show 18 is the big pre-order of the year. Last year's launched with with terrible servers, that they were unstable, there were crashes, they were down for weeks at a time, so much so that a month later, Sony San Diego had to end up giving, they gave everybody 10,000 virtual currency as an apology gift, right? So even if the developer has not necessarily earned the Reddit community or the fan base's trust, that didn't stop them from selling over 500,000 copies, right? I mean, so I think there's a question there for me of, okay, so people that go down the Kickstarter route, there is a passion there, there is a belief in wanting to see this through. For somebody that goes to Amazon or GameStop and pre-orders, that money goes to the company, the retailer. It doesn't go to the developer to help them finish it out, right? In some ways, I feel better about paying for early access to a small retailer. It doesn't go to the makes an actual splash potentially into their revenue stream to keep moving forward with their vision, versus, well, I'm just going to hold my place in line so that I know I get a copy of this game that I don't even know is going to be good. And so I think that there's a different mindset there, and I struggle to figure out what's the mindset of the people that, the 400,000 people that pre-ordered Far Cry 5. Is it really because they wanted 3 different gun skins, or is there a larger culture here that we've now become, just, it's been part of the development process that you're acculturated to think that you should pre-order?
That's
So
yeah, those are like, you have like a lot of good points there. And just so you know, I agree with both of you, that ethically I am strongly opposed to what a lot of these companies are doing. It's wrong to release something that is buggy and basically using your consumers as QA. But so I kind of, there was multiple. I took multiple notes throughout that whole thing, and now I'm going to have to pick one of them to continue the topic on. So I'll start with the last one. So the small indie team, right? You mentioned you feel good in a way. You can convince yourself, okay, I'm going to put money in on the faith that they'll finish this project. Small indie team, they're eating ramen, and they need this to make their art. So on the one hand, you're a gamer, you're a little bit of a patron. You kind of blend that. That's how Kickstarter was sold. But then we end up with Double Fine, with Tim Schafer, right? They're going on Kickstarter. They're a major publisher. They did Psychonauts. They did what was that game with the skeleton? I forget what it was called. Way back in the day.
Oh, they remastered Grim Fandango.
That's it.
But that was the LucasArts. They did Brutal Legend, right? I mean, they're a big enough studio.
I thought okay, so it wasn't Double Fine. But yeah, a big studio though, but they're using this mechanism that's pitched for the little guy. Then you have Cloud Imperium Games, which I guess technically they were a little guy at one point. Like, I don't think Cloud Imperium has ever released anything. I know that they're veterans of the industry, right? Robert Space Industries is the company behind them. And I know they have some folks in there that are veterans, but they founded this company to make this game. So people initially were like, oh, that sounds like a cool concept. I want to go there. It explodes, and you have $190 million. Basically, at this point, all you can say is it's being wasted, because I think we'd have more of a tangible product if they weren't spinning their wheels, given how much capital they have. So we end up with, it's one thing in the romantic view is that it's indie, but in reality, we have people taking advantage of consumers. Here's the word again: consumers' good intentions, which is where the Germany story comes in. Kind of.
So, Gasticles, you both kind of jumped in on me there, which is great, which is what we're supposed to do in terms of topics. What were you thinking here in terms of where does this take you? Where do you find a direction or settle on this topic?
Well, so with the pre-order thing, I guess one comment I make is there's probably some of those metrics that are a little bit muddled up. I think a lot of people pre-order just as a matter of organizational convenience, right? Like I'm really bad. I talk all the time about how we're in this geek monsoon, right? That like books, comic books, movies, video games, like it's all coming at you at a million light years a minute. It's hard to keep up and keep track with with everything. I have never kept track of game release dates well until this year when we physically sat down and wrote them ourselves. Um, because like I don't can't really remember other than maybe one or two big games when something is coming out. Um, so I think a lot of people just it is their pin in their calendar corkboard, right? It's oh yeah, this game is coming out, right? Or it gives them they can go log into an account and see their pre-orders and go, oh, these are the 5 games that I'm racing the clock against. Um, I, when I swerve over to the whole Kickstarter thing, I maybe not maybe. I mean we've put a lot on Chris Roberts, and I think a lot of it is on him. I'm just gonna go ahead and go on record in saying that those organizations are criminal. What they're doing with Star Citizen is just an outright travesty, and I think it puts the entire industry in a bad light. So let me put that aside. That all being said, there are people, there are customers, there are consumers who are putting their money into that who should know better. So I'm going to put a little bit on that on them too, and say, maybe in a more negative manner than I normally put things. People should just not be stupid. Um, you know, you, I mean, everybody should establish. We're part of the problem is that it's been hard to establish paradigms because the industry hasn't given us good structure, right? So we had pre-orders and we had demos. We had free to play, and then you could unlock. All of that stuff is all muddled up in a big ball of things that are similar but are labeled and spelled a little bit differently. But they're all kind of the same thing. It's the whole point of you getting an increment of a game for a cost or a no cost, and then being allowed to go to an additional purchase tier to get the rest of the game. Um, on the topic of, I guess, Kickstarters, early access, early game release, all these different things that the industry is calling it, everybody needs to have thresholds and establish their own rules and structure for how much you're willing to put in and how much is too much. And if you're an investor, then you need to treat it like a stock, right? Which means you evaluate risk. And anytime you go to purchase a stock, you evaluate how much risk you're willing to absorb, because with any money that you pay out, there's always going to be an amount that you have to absorb. You can't transfer that risk. You can't, um, ignore the risk. It's gonna, if the risk is realized, it's going to hit you, and some percentage of what you invest is going to be impacted by that. So, while I've been quick to throw shade at Robert Space Industries, I also have to say maybe I'm not that sympathetic about somebody who took $190,000 or whatever and dumped it into Star Citizen instead of maybe donating computers to a local school or paying for some people to have potable water. I don't know. Maybe maybe I don't need to get up on that high a pedestal. But at a certain point, there's a certain threshold, right? And believe me, I encountered that this weekend as I dipped my toes for the first time into Fortnite, which is not a released game, right? But there were some cool aspects to it. But I had to establish some thresholds on how much money I was going to give Epic Games for a game that was still not complete.
Real quick, we're all making too many points at one time because then all right. So about the investment thing. So you mentioned it should be like a stock, right? What are you investing in? Ultimately, you're investing in your entertainment, yes? So you're like, this game is going to be cool. I'm going to want to play this game. I'm going to invest in that. The risk is that the game will not release. That's the risk reward scenario. So like, I think a wise investor would be like, I'm just going to sit out and my $10 isn't going to make or break this game. It'll come out eventually if it's worth, a publisher will pick it up or whatever. And, it'll come out and I'll be able to buy it. And then if it stinks, I can skip it. So, saying that we're investing in a game in Kickstarter, I really hate that term. You're either a consumer, you're buying it, or you believe in the project and and you want to be a patron. But you know what? Ultimately, what do you want to get out of it? Do you want to get a cool game? You're a consumer. Be smart about it. Do you want to see something? Do you want to be part of something? You can be a patron. And I think that's where this ties in with, I think, the regular pre-order stuff is, basically, as you mentioned, organizational convenience for why people pre-order. I think some of the mentality is, I was there first. I was there at the beginning, man. I saw that game. I pre-ordered that game. That's how much I love that game. And I want to be able to say, man, I love Zelda so much. I sent my mom to Sears to get me the gold cartridge. And I still talk about that, and it's like 20 years later. So I think that's where it unifies. So with the Kickstarter, it's just like now been funneled into like a money making machine on the internet. But all of it is a person wants to be a part of something. A person wants to be a part of a community. Not all people, but most. And I think that's how we can kind of tie the physical pre-orders to this Kickstarter aspect.
But I guess the point on that where I would differ is when you're a patron, there is, and I would almost contend that the application of that term inherently means the assumption of zero return, right? You are giving money for somebody to create a thing, but other than funding their freedom to create, there's not any inherent, like, right, there's very little definition of you getting anything. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think the way I think about it is you're giving somebody money, you tell them that this is for you to create a thing, but
just like anyone else that's been a patron of the arts in the 5,000 years of civilization.
Right, completely agreed. That's not how Kickstarter is branded, right?
No.
Kickstarter.
No, I agree that it's, yeah.
Yeah, so.
But they also have gone out to make the point that it's not an investment because you're not getting a return, right? The only return is maybe the Kickstarter reward, but unlike an investor in a company who's going to, buy in for a certain amount or expect a share price back, the Kickstarter doesn't, the only return you get is hopefully a finished product.
Well, right, but so depending on how you want to phrase it, I agree and I align with the definition. You're not an investor as far as you are not becoming a stockholder, right? You're not buying in and getting an early claim on shares, but there is the established expectation that you are to get out of your, call it investment or early purchase, super pre-order, I don't know, but the expectation is that you get a finished product back. The people who have put money into Star Citizen have yet to get a finished product back, and the company isn't, as far as I can tell, even laying claim to an expected shipping date.
Well, man, I think we can keep going if we wanted to, but I think I just glanced at the clock and we're pretty much running out of time. So, DB,
I'm
do
going
you
to
have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to say the idea behind this topic, or at least within this topic's mindset, is I had 2 games pre-ordered for the fall, right? I had 2 games pre-ordered for the fall. I had Spider-Man, the collector's edition, because I'm a big Spider-Man fan and I know that I want that piece. So that's a whole separate piece, as Agasicles had said. And I also, after E3, got caught up in the excitement and pre-ordered Starlink, the Toys for Life space shooter, because I thought, well, maybe the Star Fox one will be hard to find. And this weekend, I canceled it. 1, because I don't know enough about the game to know that it's going to be good or complete. And 2, that even if I am thinking about it, regardless of if it sells out, it probably won't, because it's Ubisoft. And Ubisoft's games are always going on discount, and there's always a bunch of stock on hand. And so even using my logic of an investment or a financial trade-off, it didn't work for me. And so I completely went down that path that Agasicles you started on, of why pre-order until you know enough about it, unless you're going to be kind of doing it as a fan, as a vote of confidence. Why do it until you know what you're getting?
Yeah, I think that the I think to wrap up, like the mentality of, you know, we as gamers going in is really important, because we've talked a lot tonight about how the industry is kind of presenting it, and then we talked a lot of semantically about, you know, what it actually all means. Um, we didn't really get into as much in the personal responsibility. I guess we did. We touched on like personal responsibility as gamers, but I think that is downstream of how you perceive yourself and your relationship with the publisher, um, which I guess could grow into a topic in and of itself, how a gamer perceives himself and his relationship with publishers. We didn't even really get into the topic, like how much, you know, do we agree with what Germany's proposed yet, and how that pertains to personal responsibility. But yeah, I think there's one thing we can all agree on. It's that Star Citizen sucks, and we want them to coin a phrase that I've heard from a famous company: "Don't be evil." And you know, people should just, I think, just like in normal life, you know, trust but verify, and you know, go go in with a little bit more caution, I think, because there are some people out there that might want to take advantage of your good nature. So
So, so one thing I did want to throw in at the end, just about the Germany topic, since we didn't get a chance to discuss that, and it's just to bring up a couple curiosities for thought. One of the big issues that has been toggling around in the legal system in Europe that they take much more seriously than we do in the U.S. is the notion of forcing publishers and retailers to give refunds for pre-orders, which is a thing that some companies have tried to balk on. Um, you know, you know, a customer comes in and gives 45, 50, 60 bucks for a pre-order, but then wants to cancel it. Europe has said, no, 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 that you are required to give them their money back. Or to give refunds for things that were pre-ordered, have all been things that have been in contention. I feel like this topic of forcing retailers to provide release dates is coupled to that and is very adjacent to it, and that's why Germany's going after it. I'm very curious to see if this is going to continue on, and the next thing is going to be things like this, like the early access stuff, like not allowing developers to sell things in Europe unless they are finished products, and being able to provide a refund mechanism. I'd be very curious to see this whole Star Citizen thing, and I don't know if they've accepted pledges or whatever from European patrons or whatever. I'm very curious. I would be very curious to see the same case tried in a European court and see how a country like Germany would approach it, or if they would just make Robert Space Industries pay up. But I suspect that we'll continue to see constraints and due diligence enforced upon publishers and retailers in the gaming space, including into the topics that we've talked about tonight.
all right, thank you, Agasicles. Tomorrow night we have E2KG, the Gamer Experience show. Who's reporting back?
I am. I am. I am. Right. Hello. Yeah, I'm using my voice so much that I'm regressing to your age, Swiss, when you were pre-ordering Zelda. So, Mo, well, I am reporting back on the Humble Bundle assignment that you gave me. So I have 4 games that I'm reporting back from the earlier this year. One of the Humble Bundles with Mafia 3 and God Eater and a couple other indie games as well.
And I believe Prime will be hosting, and we are going to pick some gaming for him. And he's also doing. You guys are starting to get more creative with your plays segments. You're pushing the boundaries of the plays segment. So he has an interesting slate tomorrow night. But I guess that'll do it for episode 2. And for DBQ Hams and Agasicles Stamus, I am SwissGuard. Thank you all. Dear publishers, remember the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So thank you, everyone. Good night.